Hi guys, for my research, I wanted to take a look at if the flipped classroom increases student readiness. We know that it allows for more time in the classroom to do other things, labs, projects, etc. But how ready are they coming with these concepts when we use a lecture format at home? A little bit of background about me and why I chose this project is that we've been flipping lectures for just over a year now in a proficiency classroom, science. We do this with advanced biology students, so it tends to be a more homogeneous mix of students than our general biology classrooms. And we found by flipping lectures that it works best when you use formative assessments when the students arrive to see where their misconceptions are, since they can't raise their hand during lecture anymore, and when there's collaboration between students. So a little bit about my method. My question that I set out to explore was if we flip lectures and we have a small group collaboration, and this increases student readiness, I expected to see 60% of students or greater would be prepared to apply concepts, and I'm going to measure that preparedness with a score of 75% or greater on some questions that I asked them. This is going to be applied in a traditional general biology classroom because the question has always been, can we roll this out to all of our biology classes? The students will watch a flipped lecture at home and complete notes with that lecture, and then in a small group they will collaboratively work on a review sheet. It's an opportunity for them to ask questions of one another and for the teacher to circulate. Some limitations I'm working with here is that I'm on leave right now, so I'm asking another teacher to perform this for me. And we find ourselves really limited by our ability to use data in real time. So as students complete this formative assessment, we just don't have enough hours. We don't have enough hours in the day to look at that and get back to the students right away. We have used Flubaroo and other, we'll talk about those technology tools in a little bit. We lack a general biology comparison partially because of timing of the project. I think in the future it would be really interesting to have all different biology teachers have a control and an experimental group and compare our data. And then lastly, we don't really have a baseline for readiness before this data collection. We have a general sense of how many students do their work, which is how I came up with the 60%. I think on average we get about 50 to 60% of homework completion in a general biology classroom, and that can be greater or less. But what does that mean? Are they still ready? If we gave them the same common formative assessment, would they be able to get 75% better on these questions? So we don't have a baseline for that. Students would complete structured notes like this at home while or after watching the video. And they find the video on our classroom website. So here are videos that we've put together in previous years, as well as some skill set videos that you can see down here that help the students kind of walk through discrete skills that they need in class. And then after completing those notes and watching the video, they come back to class, they fill out these review sheets together, ask questions of one another, and then using the laptops, they complete an online quiz. The online quiz, or warm-up as we call it, has some discrete questions here, and then it also has some open-ended questions. And then the second half of the quiz is more qualitative data on their experience. Did they find it helpful to do this, and did they find it helpful to do it in a small group? How many times did they watch the video or rewatch the video? So let's take a look at what I found. Percent of students who watched varied greatly from 10 to 69%, but it did increase each class. So I think some of this might be contributed to it took them a while to get started, but once they got the hang of it, they continued. Students who watched performed better than non-watchers. So there were 3 flipped lectures and 3 quizzes, and the meeting ranged from 31% of watchers met on the first quiz given and 86% on the second quiz given. And non-watchers were significantly less than that, 6% to 74%. But I think that these results are very inconclusive. I'm not sure that the gain of watchers to non-watchers is what I expected. I expected watchers to have a significant increase over non-watchers, and that wasn't always the case. And, you know, I think that one of the reflections I had is we might need to really check for understanding and adjust in real time in the classroom, not afterwards. Let me show you a little bit about what I found. So this is the percent who watched and the percent who met after the flipped lecture. So this does not mean these people were the watchers. It's just, okay, we had 10% watched the first video, 86% met, and that's because these skills, I think, repeated what had been learned in previous class periods. In protein synthesis, you had a higher percent watch, but a lower percent meet, and these, you know, this is a more difficult skill than this one. And in mutations, you had a lower percent watch than previous, but it was kind of easier content. So it's really hard to tease out why students are watching and not watching, but it might be a good survey question to add in the future. And then this one I think is really interesting. This is comparing the two groups, non-watchers and watchers. Here's the easier content. They are kind of similar. They're similar again in protein synthesis, which I found shocking because this is a very difficult material, and how you could do this without watching the lecture is beyond me. And then in mutations, you know, you saw a bigger difference. Some reflections from the study. I think we need to do this again with a larger sample size. More teachers, because we all have our differences, and then each of us have a control and an experimental group, and kind of, you know, see our results. Also, I think the question needs a little tweaking. What is the right number of students to be ready? Like, you know, should we have 75% all students ready in a flipped classroom? What's the right amount? And, you know, I think there's some accountability questions I have on the teacher. So what is our role as teachers if students are, you know, students who didn't watch the lecture performing pretty well? Is the lecture necessary? So maybe this, you know, informs us as teachers that something is not needed. And also I think there's some accountability questions on the students, like how do we ensure that they watch what we think is critical content that we used to present in class so we knew everyone had the ability to get it? How do we make sure with, you know, varying levels of internet access that students are able to get that and that we have some record of them getting it? Thanks a lot.